Hello everyone, welcome back to Funeral Facts. My name is Victoria. I am a licensed funeral director and embalmer, and I am here to give you the factual information about funeral service both in modern day and throughout history. And let me start off this video by apologizing for not uploading a new video in 2 weeks. I am very sorry. Last week was Christmas, so I think I get a pass for that because Christmas. The week before that, I was just really busy and I didn't get a chance to film a video. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. I promise. Anyway, today I am back with you, and today we are going to talk about embalming fluids, the chemicals that we use in the embalming process, what that all consists of, and what that's all about. So, embalming fluids are chemicals that are used to preserve and disinfect a deceased human body. Now, the main component in most embalming fluids is formaldehyde, which preserves the tissues but is also known to be a probable carcinogen or a substance that can cause cancer. Therefore, embalmers always need an environment with proper ventilation, and they always have to wear proper PPE or personal protective equipment to protect themselves from the formaldehyde. Now, there are chemicals that you can use in place of formaldehyde as a preservative, different types of aldehydes like glutaraldehyde, for example, but the problem with them is that they sanitize the body very well, but you won't have that same level of preservation or firmness to the body that you would get with formaldehyde. Now, that's all really up to personal preference. There are certain embalmers that prefer a very firm body. There are certain embalmers that prefer a less firm body. Really, in my opinion, my firm uses both formaldehyde and glutaraldehyde, which to me, it really doesn't matter to me how firm the person is, as long as I can see that I've gotten proper distribution and they are preserved well for what I need to do. Ultimately, it depends on the case that is presented to us and our initial analysis and our initial observation of the person that is presented to us, and we'll just make our decisions from there. So in the end, it doesn't matter if you use formaldehyde or you use a different type of aldehyde, as long as you are achieving your desired result. Now, there are 5 main categories that embalming fluids fall into. Those are arterial fluids, cavity fluids, supplemental fluids, accessory chemicals, and special purpose fluids. So we'll go into great detail on each of those categories. First, let's talk about arterial fluids. Arterial fluids are diluted with water, and they are the main chemicals that will be injected into the vascular system of the body. All arterial fluids have an index that's on the outside of the bottle, and the index is basically a number that tells you how much formaldehyde gas is present inside of that fluid. The more formaldehyde gas is present, the stronger the fluid is. In order to determine what kind of arterial fluid you think you're going to need, it really depends on a few different factors, like the condition of the body, the desired degree of firmness you want to achieve, and the length of time between death and disposition of the body. Obviously, more often than not, formaldehyde acts as the main preservative in arterial fluids. And the way that formaldehyde works, in a nutshell, without going into all of the extravagant chemistry involved, formaldehyde reacts with the proteins of the body and changes them into something that won't break down as easily. Now, it's important to remember that embalming does not stop decomposition. It slows it down. So basically, when we embalm someone, that person eventually is going to decompose just like anyone else. It just takes a longer amount of time for that to actually happen. Arterial fluids also contain modifying agents in the form of buffers, humectants, anticoagulants, and surfactants. So buffers are things that stabilize the pH of that particular fluid so that it can react to whatever pH the body is in whatever state of the decomposition process it's in. Humectants help keep the tissues hydrated. They draw in moisture from the environment. Formaldehyde has a tendency to dry out the tissues, and for somebody that is a little bit on the emaciated side, you don't want them to dehydrate that much. So humectants are very important in those types of cases because they will attract moisture into the tissues and help to achieve the natural, more, I guess, plumped up, you can say, condition of the skin for your final result. Anticoagulants help the blood stay in its liquid state and prevent it from clotting so that it's easier for us to remove it from the body. Surfactants affect the surface tension of the fluid so that it can penetrate and permeate through those tissues better, and so that aids in the overall distribution of the fluid throughout the entire body. Arterial fluids also contain dyes. These dyes can either be an active dye, which means that they will help color the tissues, or they can be an inactive dye, which basically just means that they make the fluid in the bottle a pretty color, and that's about it. Now, some fluids will have a perfuming or masking agent that will affect the scent of the fluid. I personally don't think that they're a very good idea, and the reason why is formaldehyde doesn't smell good. Formaldehyde smells stanky, and there's a good reason for that. Formaldehyde, as I mentioned before, is a probable carcinogen. If you breathe too much of that stuff in, you get irritation in your throat, in your nose, your eyes. It smells rotten, and it's not good for you to be breathing in. It causes a lot of problems if you breathe a lot of it in throughout your lifetime. It can cause a lot of different health issues if you don't have proper ventilation in your area or you're not wearing proper personal protective equipment. Now, if you smell a strong odor of formaldehyde in the room that you're standing in, that's a good indication that you might want to leave that room and open up some windows or something, because that's a lot of formaldehyde in the room with you, and that's not healthy. The problem is that if it smells good, it's not going to bother you as much. So you're not going to get that thing that clicks in your mind like, oh, there's a lot of formaldehyde in here, I might want to leave, because you smell something pretty. So it doesn't really work. So just in my personal opinion, I don't think that perfuming and masking agents are a good idea, but certain fluids will have them. I have worked with a few that have had those perfuming things in them. To me, it's silly, and it doesn't really benefit you in any way other than the scent of the actual fluid. But like I said, I think it's dangerous, so I prefer not to have those, but to each their own. Next up are cavity fluids. Cavity fluids are concentrated embalming chemicals that are not diluted with water. They're used in their natural form, and after aspiration of the cavity of the body has been completed, they are injected into that cavity with the trocar so that you can preserve the internal organs and all of the rest of the body that's not part of the vascular system. You can also use cavity fluid for surface embalming, which is more for things like wounds, like bed sores, that you need to preserve that tissue that's exposed. So in that sort of a case, you can take a big wad of cotton, you can douse it with cavity fluid and actually use it as a pack on the wound, wherever that wound may be, and it will help to preserve that exposed tissue. So next you have supplemental fluids. Those are things that are injected into the arterial system for things other than preservation or disinfection. They can be injected before you add formaldehyde as a pre-injection, or they can be injected with your formaldehyde solution as a co-injection. These types of fluids are usually things like vascular conditioners or water corrective fluids, things like that. So they don't really have any preservative or disinfection purpose. They're usually just there to aid in the ability of the fluid to distribute nicely. Then you have your accessory chemicals. Those are things that are not injectable. Usually they come in either a gel or powder form and they contain formaldehyde, but they're used for topical applications on the body. So for example, if you have an area of the body that you've noticed didn't get as preserved as you would have liked it to be, you can take an embalming gel and you can put it on that part of the body that you think needs extra preservation, and it will embalm that tissue from the surface. Lastly, you have special purpose fluids. Special purpose fluids are exactly what they sound like. They're used for special purposes, for special body conditions that may present, like jaundice, like edema, like advanced decomposition. And they are specifically designed to help preserve the tissues. In the case of jaundice, they help with that discoloration, that yellow discoloration that you get from jaundice. Fluids that are for edema help to partially dehydrate that area of the body that is edematous. If anybody doesn't know what edema is, it's basically a buildup of fluid in a specific area. Most often we see it in the lower extremities, the legs, the feet. So in that kind of a case, we would use an edema fluid in order to partially dehydrate that area. Now you don't want to totally dehydrate it because you don't want them to end up mummified, but you do want to take all of that excess fluid out of that area. So special purpose fluids for edema are very useful in that kind of a situation. There are also fluids that are designed with cases that present with advanced decomposition. So they will help you achieve that level of preservation and slow down that decomposition so that you can try and either do a restorative work, or worst case scenario, you may have to have a closed casket if it's very advanced, but at least you can have the person in the casket and they will not be deteriorating any further for the time being, if that makes sense. In a nutshell, selecting a specific chemical or chemicals for your embalming solution is going to rely heavily on your initial observation of the body and your analysis of what's going on in front of you. I always like to say there is no set solution that you should be thinking, I need to use this for every single case. It's kind of like making a good pasta sauce. Sounds really weird to compare it to a food, but it kind of is. You know how when you make a good pasta sauce, you add a little bit of this and a dash of that and a splash of this and some of that and some of that, and it makes it really tasty. The same concept kind of applies to embalming solutions. You can add a little of this and a little of that, and oh, they have this going on, so I'm gonna add a little bit of this and a little dash of that and mix it all together, and poof, you have embalming solution. So yes, embalming solution is a pasta sauce, in essence. So that's all the facts that I have for you today on embalming solutions and embalming fluids. Please like, comment if you would like to, subscribe to the channel for more funeral facts. Don't forget to follow me on social media. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram. Links will be in the description below. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!